All right, welcome to episode 8 of What's in the Box. I am Tolgar, VP of Marketing at Tatsoft, and with me is our founder and CTO, Mark Tecklini. How are you, Mark?
I'm great, thank you.
Can you believe we're on episode 8 already?
Surprising.
Time flies when you're having fun. All right, so just at the very beginning here, just want to say that later on, at the end of this broadcast, we're going to cover some questions that were dropped in our forum that relate to the topic today. And today we're going to be covering HTML5. So without further ado, Mark, let's just get to the good stuff.
Well, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, before I do that, let me just give some base information right away for eventually for someone that not be able to go the full session.
Okay.
I'll give the 10,000 feet 101 right away. Yes, we do support screens that are pure HTML5 JavaScript that you can deploy in any kind of device. As well, we support .NET thin clients that you don't need to install on the client side as well. And both technologies, the pure HTML5 and the .NET, we can put out from the same server. So you can have different type of clients accessing that server. And we can do what the people should call the responsive dashboards, that when you resize, we relocate the grids and the components. So if you open a large screen or desktop, you have a view. If you open a narrow iPhone, they will position accordingly. Or you can create screens that will resize proportionally. If it's a drawing, if it's a plant floor, we don't want you can't really organize. You need to just resize proportionally. And when create applications, we support both technologies out on the same projects. So it's very easy either to create responsive dashboards as well HTML5 codes that will resize proportionally. And you can do that using our built-in controls, sharing in between .NET and HTML5, or you can add very easily your custom HTML5 controls as well. And yes, we can embed third-party controls, and we ourselves can run inside a frame of another application. Fantastic. So if I create your custom website and you need only a frame with some real-time contents, we can provide that real-time piece. Wow. And so during this presentation, you show all those things in detail, but what I'm explaining now is the typical high-level questions that we have on what's possible to do. And the real-time is the key component because we do not try to do a designer to create web pages or websites. There are 10,000 amazing tools for that. We do try to solve the problem when you need a component or a window or a frame that needs real-time data with great performance and easy configuration. We don't want to go too deep in learning HTML5, CSS, just want to put our real-time data to work very quickly, not only on the execution time, but as well on creating those pages. That was behind the concept of our HTML5 supports, to deliver real-time data information in an easy way and with good performance and easy to do the maintenance on the application. Okay.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
I've worked with HTML5 and CSS, and I think, the real-time data component is what I find very impressive in terms of when I was working to what we have now,
So with no further, let me share my display and start to going on details on that, okay? And I'm going to all times, so I'm sorry someone will be a little lost on that. I'll be switching from time to time in between those two environments. One being just my Mac computer, where I'm running some web pages running here, and this other environment that's a Windows virtual machine inside my Mac. So we are going to use both environments. So when I do the switch, you know what's happening. Okay.
Okay.
So before I go to the product configuration, let's start with some basic examples. So as I was saying, this is an example of a web page that I'm running that web page inside my Mac computer using the Safari browser. Okay. That's pointing to an application we have on Azure. And here you see the typical traditional components that you find in a real-time monitor application, a tablet SCADA or a plant enterprise solution. So you have the login, you have the ability to do your alarm windows, technology alarms, you have your trend charts, you have custom objects, you have integration with third-party components, HTML5 components. You can have other media controls like video, or you can leverage symbols from a library. And this screen is the dashboard style screen, meaning that you can maximize one component of the dashboards, or when you resize, as I was explaining, in this case, we are going to reorganize the components. So here, I'm looking the components as if I was in an iPhone. Or here, when we have enough space, we do another layout. That's the type of page that in our platform we call just dashboards or responsive dashboards. Okay.
Yeah.
And before I go to the details of the configuration, let me switch to my Edge computer.
Mark, I just want to add very quickly, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
At the webinar, you presented the responsive dashboard, which you guys can go ahead and watch. It's on our YouTube channel. The webinar took place on March 25th. But Mark introduced, the OE dashboard that we have that's responsive. So that's going to be included in the upcoming version, correct? That we're going to be releasing?
That example, yes.
Yes.
But the technology and the functionality is already there.
Yeah.
We can right now deliver those responsive dashboards, both in .NET or HTML5.
Got it.
What we're going to release soon are additional examples and templates to speed you up to do specific use cases.
Excellent.
But the basic drawing tool and configuration tools, they are there. We're just adding more enhancements to speed up the development of specific cases, like when you are doing a map view from a tree, looking different assets or OE application. There is lots of additional templates and functionalities that, yes, are going to put out very shortly.
Thank you.
And as I was explaining before, there are some cases that when resizing, you don't want to do that. There are some cases that when you resize, you just want to make everything smaller proportionally, as I'm doing here. So just to make clear, we can do both. And I'll explain a little bit more how you create those user interfaces. And as I told you, you can also, as I'm showing this example, pick up some real-time data and put inside some other frame or HTML5 code we created. So in this example, we pick up our own website and create a web page that this area here on this frame, we have our website, and this frame, we have some real-time contents, just to show that we can put those components inside another HTML5 projects that are creating some other tools, and only have one frame with the real-time data.
Okay.
Okay. Let's start to see how we can do all those things, because right now you see I have different pages open. I have this one here, I have this one here, I have this other map application running on HTML5. I have this other screen showing how you can easily create those pop-ups in HTML5, pointing to different applications. And one nice feature about that, I'm running all those applications at the same time, as you see, in different tabs from my browser. And surprisingly enough, I'm not even pointing that to different servers to be easier to my demo environments. All those very different applications and data models, they're pointing to the same server computer using different data ports. So I'm using pretty much my own computer for that. But of course, you can open here one more tab, pointing to the data in another server if you want to. Of course, you also can do that. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
But here in this demo, I explore the facts that we can put different sets of data running out from the same server. Okay. But let's see how we do all of that. Okay.
Okay.
Well, first of all, again, if you're not that familiar with our products, we call the Factory Studio Project Manager, where you have many project solutions. Each one of those icons is a completely project configuration. And a project configuration, I mean a set of displays, a set of database or PLC connections, and some data models, scripts. It's essentially a solution around some user interface and some data. And each one of those, you can change the view. It's one self-contained solution that you can deploy to a remote computer. And yes, we can use Docker, or you can remote to deploy server, or you can put that running in your computer, and not necessarily only one. In this case, I have those 5 projects that I'm running. And I'm using the feature we have here in the top. You can change the theme. So when I go to my configuration tool, I can very easily not get confused with those 5 data models because you see we have different colors to each one. So the application I'm using to layout maps is called Maps HTML5. And I'm using this dark theme. The one I'm using to show integration with HTML5 controls is this other example. Okay. The application I'm using to show pop-ups is using this other color schema. So when I open my project configuration, I can very easy not open to edit many different data sets, or as I'm doing here, even run many of those applications out from the same computer. Okay. And those many examples that I'm going to show, if they are not yet published in our support websites, they'll be very soon, likely next week or something like that. So if you don't find one of those examples in our websites, let us know. We'll give you the link or make sure it's published. So let's keep doing the deep dive on how you set up, how you create those pages. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, a basic review of our products. I cannot assume everyone here knows everything or sees on detail. But we do have this very powerful drawing tool that's based on Windows Presentation Foundation. That is the same tool, exactly the same tool that we're going to use to create pages to all those technologies, whatever they are, .NET Smart Clients, HTML5 clients, or iPads. And there is another previous video that I explain in more detail the difference between those three types of technologies, okay?
Okay.
In this case, I will focus on HTML5. And whatever is .NET or HTML5, you have that option to that page to be a dashboard or not. What's the difference? When it's not a dashboard, it's something like that, or a process diagram that will resize proportionally.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it is a dashboard, it means that page is something like that I have in this other application. Hold on, let me find here. I think this dashboard web was probably with, yes, something like that, where you can add not as a chart, but as a grid or a table. So you drop and drop components here and do your UI in that kind of interface, okay?
That makes things easier.
Yes, if what you're doing, of course, is creating dashboards, okay? So there are three styles of pages, and that's not a project configuration, that's a display configuration. So you can have your application, some displays that you just drop symbols and components, or you can have a page where you do that kind of free drawing layout where you can do your beautiful process diagram here. Okay. Nice. And whatever you are using those environments, the basic way you do your project configuration, it's very simple. You don't need to do anything about HTML5. What you are going to do, here I'm creating a page for HTML5. The code behind for that page is JavaScript when it's HTML5, but you don't need to know anything on JavaScript to do most of the screens, because what we're going to do is going to pick up a component here, like an alarm window, or you go to the symbol library and you pick up, for instance, this valve and put the valve on the screen.
Okay.
And you map the valve to what tag you want to be driving the value of this valve. Or you can insert a tag, or even easier, you can just copy and paste a tag and paste on the screen. And when you paste that tag, the system will create automatically the default user interface for that type of tag. In this case, is what I did last week, was explain about PIDs. That will be the default visualization for that PID tag, okay? And when you're doing those mappings, there is no coding. We just map the symbols to the tags, or you insert tags and we do automatic the mapping, and you put that application to run. And I'll talk about deployments in a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So what I'm doing is exactly the same what to be doing if it's a Windows page. In fact, I can even copy and paste symbols between one and another. And in addition to using our predefined symbols, of course, you can also pick up any symbol you created, like this one. And it's my very not nice symbol. And I can apply some dynamic behavior to that symbol. So in this case, I'm picking up in this symbol I just created and adding to change colors. And here I'm going to put some sort of simulation tag to this variable. So essentially, you can create your custom symbols with complete freedom. That's another thing I don't see in some other packages for real-time data. They have some case a very nice symbol of components, but they don't have the freedom to create really anything and apply any kind of dynamic behavior. And now you have a new symbol on your library. Okay. So that's one of the areas that I believe we are really interested on that. Okay. But let's keep moving. Here, my display I just created, showing that in HTML5. Okay.
Wow.
Probably it was better before, but my point is that I created that to be a little complex animation with one object on top of another one, different options on the display with proportional resizing. And I create that not having a clue of HTML5 and JavaScript.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the key part. Yeah.
And I'll talk more about integration with third-party components, but let me just stop a moment to talk about deployments. Okay.
Okay.
When we install Faculty Studio, we also install automatically. You can go through the icons here. And it will be this icon here, T Web Server. T Web Server is an embedded web server that we deploy when we install Faculty Studio, that will be able to serve those HTML5 pages. Typically, we install that on port 8 or on port 3100 if port 8 is busy, but you can install in any port, and you can also put that to run as a Windows service. So to many applications, you don't need to do any IIS configuration because there are many and many customers using our embedded web server in production environments, okay? But to be clear, you can also deploy those web pages in an IIS, on the Microsoft IIS web tool. When doing that, the only thing, you gain lots of additional management tools, some more tools around security, IIS, a very complete package for web delivery, as you know. But of course, need to do the setup on IIS, what I'm not covered in this presentation. So just keep in mind, you can use our embedded web server. It's out of the box, zero configuration, or you can deploy those servers on those pages on Microsoft IIS as well. Allegedly, you can deploy in any web server, but realistically, what we see people using is our built-in or the Microsoft IIS. I don't really saw much people going to other solutions on that.
Is the IIS setup fairly complex, or is it?
It can be a little bit because different versions of IIS, if it's 60, 80, they have different settings.
Got it.
So you need to have some basic IT background to do that properly. We give the steps very easily. Do this, do this, do that. So allegedly, even automation engineer with zero IIS and IT knowledge may follow the steps. But the problem, he needs to follow the steps very carefully because he will not really understand what he's doing. So ideally, if you're going to use Microsoft IIS, we do the recommendation that someone from your IT should set up the IIS for you.
Makes sense.
Anyway, so let's keep talking about deployments. When you have one application, you can have many web pages in the same application. So here I'm inside this application, changing different web pages inside the same application. And you see also the benefits of having our built-in technology, because we are able to change the displays and present the real-time data a little bit quicker, because we have built-in caching. We have some features that allow the display switching to happen a little bit faster than a standard HTML5 page, because our behind of the scenes caching. So in this case, all those pages that was doing the navigation, they are getting data from the same server computer, which is this one here, okay? And to be clear, it can be a server computer or can be a Factory Studio application running in other ports from the same server. A little explanation that's not related with HTML5, but you need to understand that concept in your application. When we have all those project configurations that I'm showing, I can be doing that project configuration completely offline, not running the data at all, or I can also doing the configuration, allowing or not online configuration, at the same time I'm running the application. By running the application, it means we are serving the data, we are running the protocols if you have, we are really executing the scripts, you are doing the execution of that configuration. When you put a server computer to run the application, you can customize the port number. By default, it's 3101, but you can modify those two ports to other numbers. They need to be consecutive, by the way, but can be any number. So in this case, I put this project called Features HTML5 running in that port. I put also this other application called New Pop-ups running in port 3501. So when I go to my Edge browser, when I'm connect to ports 3503, I'm accessing the application that I'm running this computer that show the features to open pop-ups, mapping to different areas of your data model. So this application, by the way, in case I don't have time to explain how the details on how you do, is showing that you can have HTML5 pages that open the same HTML5 page, but instead of showing line 2, I'm open a new page showing line 3. And I'm open this application where we can share the same HTML page across different data out from this application here. This other map application, I'm connecting with another project running in another server or in this same computer. Help me here, Tolga. Is that clear enough?
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I wanted to just ask you a quick question that you were talking about before in terms of the dashboards or anything that you're kind of designing in HTML5. If there's some sort of a performance related issue because you've put a lot of things on screen or what have you, is that to improve those things? Is that a CPU? Is that a RAM? Or is that a GPU enhancement?
Well, it depends on what is the limitation. It can typically it to be, well, really depends on what is the bottleneck, because it can be either GPU or the graphical sides. Okay. But I dare to say most of the time you can solve on the design of the page. Because what does happen is, I will talk about that performance question on the ends,
Okay, sure, no problem.
Because if they understand a little bit more of our solution, they understand what we did to solve the performance problem. Because on the end of the day, the basic explanation to our question, if you try to create web pages by brute force, as you're creating HTML5 pages and mapping the components and doing lots of JavaScript codes and going to the tree of the objects, if you have thousands of elements, you are going to have a poor performance.
Okay.
Because there are still some limitations on the HTML5 technology that if you see that video in 1, 2, 3 years from now, probably what I'm saying will be valid no more. But right now you have. But if you do our built-in drawing tools to do what's more heavy, we have lots of optimization behind the scenes. So what I mean by that, after the end of the presentation, I will explain a little bit more about that. But my point is, if you have to have complex objects like that, and this object is not a bitmap, it's a vector graphic symbol, and I've just opened here to see. You see, it's a vector graphics. So this symbol has hundreds of elements. So if you try to create web pages where you have really hundreds of thousands of symbols mapping to real-time data and some real complex vector graphic objects, not bitmaps, again, everything that I'm showing here is vector graphics, and any piece of that object may have a dynamic property. Like this can be rotated behind the scenes. If you try to do a web page with thousands of elements with real-time data, using standard HTML5 and JavaScript programming, you are going to have bad performance. But that's not what we do. When you do these environments, even the target is HTML5, and on behind the scenes, you can do JavaScript. We put lots of optimization on the deployment and on those screens, creating canvas when it's necessary, subscribing events automatically. And because of that, those pages will run at a performance level that will not have if you do a standard HTML5 programming. Because what we have running here, I think that would be a good moment to explain, is a cross-platform development tool. What's that, if the first time you hear that expression? I am not in an HTML5 page here. I'm a .NET framework tool. And I'm creating a page that you target HTML5. And because it's a cross-development tool, we can do lots of behind-the-scenes optimization that you would not have if you are doing plain HTML5. You have to create hundreds, some case thousands of lines of script to achieve similar results. In our case, you don't. Because when you publish that to HTML5, you do lots of behind of the scenes when we move from the .NET to the HTML5 publishing. Okay. So far makes sense, Tolga?
Yeah, actually, I mean, we're speaking my language a little bit here, so definitely.
Okay, good. And I'll explain a little bit more about that performance later. And by the way, it's good because I'm showing that you can modify the applications as the application are running. You don't need to start and stop to modify anything. Okay. Anyway, let me keep moving. And need a little recap here. I was talking before the question performance, Tolga.
You want to go into a deeper dive now. That's what you were transitioning to.
Okay, so I was explaining that you can use those. Oh, I talk about deployments. Okay, and I was saying that those URLs, they can point to different servers or to different applications inside the same server if the port is different, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that we have the product's a little hidden now, but I promise we'll have an update very soon to expose that more clearly, is that when you are running the server-side components that are connected with the PLCs, this process is called T-server. And you see in this computer, I'm running 3 applications, 3 completely independent projects out from the same server.
Wow.
And when I put the mouse over, we see here that we do have the name of the application, and we do have some port numbers there, 3801, 3802, 3803. What those port means, okay? When you do your project configuration, you define here, and that's the thing we're going to change on the next small updates. We're going to expose more clearly that when you do the port 3201 here, that's the communication port, the .NET Smart Clients. This is the communication port to the .NET Smart Clients using Windows Authentication or LDAP. And what we're going to add here on the UI, because it was hidden and many users pointed us that we should that more clear, we also put running the port 3203, as you can see here. That's the entry point for the web pages. So when you do your URL to get data from this Maps application, this map application is publishing data in 3 ports. It's publishing data in this port for the standard Windows thin clients running Windows computers. He's publishing data in this port 3202 for the Windows authentication clients. And it's also publishing data in the port 3203 for the HTML5 clients, okay?
Wow, yeah.
So when you create your URL, talk about deployment, you're going to put the name of your server computer. Of course, can be www, whatever, okay? Like I have in this other demo, you see here is another URL, okay? And another port. So the URL chip should reflect your server and your ports, okay?
Okay.
And another explanation, if you are using our embedded web server, we are going to have that SF 9.1 here on the URL, because our embedded web server allows you to even have running the same computer at the same time project from different product releases. So I can be running 8.1 and 9.1 out of the same computer, okay?
Yeah.
When you deploy in Microsoft Azure on the cloud, or when you do IIS, your URL will be a little different. It will be only the computer domain name, the port, and HTML5, okay? Depends on how we are doing the deployments, okay?
Yeah.
And one thing I'm not covering detail now, but we allow our URLs jump to a specific page when you open. So not necessarily when you do your application or when you embedded your application in another frame, like I'm doing here, we need to go to the default page. You can set up URLs to jump to a specific page out from that server. Okay. So far, so good, Tolga. Any questions from you?
No, this is great. I mean, we've got some questions from the forum that we'll cover at the end, but
okay. So let's start to get close to wrap up. So when you are creating pages using our own built-in tools, You don't even need to have zero understanding, frankly, of HTML5. Because if you want to create a new page from scratch to HTML5, you just select here HTML5. You select if you to be a dashboard style or a process diagram style, okay? And here you start to pick up your symbols using your drawing tools the same way you do in the .NET. So here I'm putting here my checkbox. I'm mapping this checkbox to a tag. Here I'm going to create my bar graph, and I'll map that to another tag, or I can use the feature we showed last week to map directly to an MQTT broker or a database. I pick up the symbols from the library, and the symbols, they are cross-platform. So I can pick up a symbol that was created in a Windows display. If I want this button to have an action, I select here what action I want to do, like open display, or set up a value for a tag. Or if it's a more complex, I can create a scripting that will be run in reaction to that. So in this case, I go the code behind, and for web page, the script is JavaScript. But even you don't know much of JavaScript, we still have our IntelliSense. So if I want to do in that script is just play with my tags, you see I can do that, not even really knowing much about JavaScript, because everything we have in our product on IntelliSense namespaces, you still can use here right away. Of course, to more advanced features, you need to start to know a little bit of JavaScript. But if all I want to do is to pick up the CPU clock or the CPU memory and put on that tag, the CPU's edge, that's it, okay? You don't need to know really much. Or if you want to call a script class created in Factory Studio, I did talk with you on the past our tasks, but you can use our namespaces here as well, okay? And the final concept I want to talk is about integration with other components, okay? When you have .NET, we had lots of built-in components out of the box. And we did pick up some very nice HTML5 components, like the traditional gauges is the typical examples, bar charts, pie charts, that this component is a HTML5 component, okay? But what we did in that component, we hide from you the needing to map that object, the code behind on the JavaScript and subscribe the events. We created a custom configuration dialog to those HTML5 components.
Wow.
So without having to go to any JavaScript configuration, you can set up here the ranges where I'm going to switch colors. You can set up which tag in your application will provide data for that gauge. So you can set up all the typical configurations from that gauge without one line of code, okay?
No, that gauge is amazing. Yeah, it makes things easier.
It does, but in some cases, you may want also to add a custom HTML5 control. When you add a custom HTML5 control, let's go here to this page that I have an example of that. You can add a complete generic HTML5 control as well. When you add a complete generic HTML5 control, you need to do the configuration where is the repository for the JavaScript code and the CSS script codes to be able to run that control, okay? If you're not familiar with HTML5 controls, that we start to get a little lost now. But if you do HTML5 programming, you understand what I'm saying. But essentially, here you point to the JavaScript and CSS code, so you can handle that components. And here on the code behind, you need to put some initialization codes so you can bind or subscribe events from that object or set up values. So here is the code that I would have to do always if we didn't have the features we create in our product. So that kind of coding that I'm accessing the tree of the items, I'm accessing the properties of the .NET of the HTML5 controls is what you have to do always in some of the tools when you're doing low-level .NET programming. In our case, you only need to do that to access the object from the tree, to bind the properties, to do the JavaScript programming with the external WPF controls that you want to add, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But it's great that you have that flexibility because, for instance, in these demo applications that I'm running here, okay, this is an external WPF control. This map control, we are not using our built-in map. Here, this is an external WPF control, and this is an external WPF control. So we can very easily put our built-in controls with external HTML5 components on the same page. The only thing on those controls, you need to do the JavaScript binding and subscription to handle that control in your application, okay?
Okay.
And one final concept that we're going to have, again, that's not a training. If we're going to do applications using real-time HTML5 pages, we still need to go to our product training to fully leverage all the features that we have, okay? Here I'm just staying at the concept level. But one final concept I want to share, in this example here, you see this is a generic HTML5 control we added to this screen. This is a built-in control. This is a built-in control from the library, okay?
Okay.
This, the pie chart, was an external control. So if I go to the code behind, we'll see we have to do that codes accessing the objects from the tree on the display, on the DOM model, and we have to map what we want to do with that object. We need to do the JavaScript, okay?
Okay.
But one thing that we have is great. If there is some control that are going to use a lot in your application, and we don't have as a component, we can very easily create, because we have a toolkit for that. We have a library that we can pick up .NET, any HTML5 control, and create those configuration dialogues that I was explaining to you before. Mm-hmm. So we don't need to go to JavaScript. We can add that configuration layer very easily in any HTML5 components using our SDK, our application programming development kits. If you are an advanced user, we can eventually even share those APIs so you can do that by yourself, okay?
Yeah.
So instead of doing JavaScript all times, if you are going always to use that type of component, it's much better that you pick up that components that are going to use all times, like we did here in this gauge that was HTML5 code originally. So what we did with this gauge is that we create this configuration dialog. So I just can map the tag directly to put the value in the gauge, okay? And what kind of configuration each control you have, of course, you define when you define the objects. You decide which of the component properties you want to expose for configuration. Some of those configurations, it will be defined only one time, like the color. Some of these configurations are going to map to dynamic data sources. But even it's a HTML5 component behind the scenes, when you put that wrapper, when you put that dialog on the top, you don't need to think about HTML5 or style sheets, anything like that anymore. Okay. Yeah. And that's a recommendation. If there is a HTML5 component, are going to use a lot in your projects to do that, to simplify your life. Okay. But again, great. You can out of the box do integration with any kind of external HTML5 components.
That's powerful.
And one last thing I want to show before I want to show, for instance, this thing that I'm running here. It wasn't created with our tool. What I'm running here, this part was created with our designer. Okay. And where I have this alarm history, and I have some other components here. But this part here is just a frame point to our own website. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I want to show that what we're running here, I have a guy from technical support just creating very, that's just created this morning. Please create me a little web page on iframe. So here, as chief engineer, he created exactly that and not more than that. So that's why it's simple, but it's all I needed really. I've just created a HTML5 page where I have an iframe pointing to our website and another iframe pointing to a URL from a testing Azure application that we have, and another iframe pointing to some other area. And this is HTML5 programming, of course.
Yeah.
The point is you can embed it in your web page or website one iframe with real-time data. Or you can embed it in your bigger dashboard that you're using another programming tool, some real-time content pointing to a specific page in the application or to a specific data model in that application, okay?
Yeah.
So if you want to create an application that looks more websites, and I'm saying that because a complaint, I will not say a complaint, but I will say an observation. Someone told us that all the demos we are doing now for HTML5, the look and feel sometimes, how you do the navigation, how we do the displays, they are more similar to standard applications, standard scaled applications or standard factory supervision applications running in HTML5 rather than websites. And frankly, that's completely true. Because all if you want was a website with no real-time data, frankly, you would need our tool, okay? And by the way, here I'm showing you have the ability to work teams without having to know CSS. In this application, we create the application so we can support different quality schemas using a built-in feature that we have that works, doesn't matter if it's HTML5 or .NET displays. The same configuration to do styling. We have built in the product without having to go to the CSS.
That's great. That was
but
part
again,
of 9.1.
Yes, but again, of course, our styles, they will have a good resemblance for real-time data dashboards, because if what you do is our page, please do our page. So when you're doing your application to your final customer, you have two options. You can do the navigation buttons, everything in our platform, the secure dialogues. So the web container will be us. That's what I mean. All the navigation, you have all the tools. So the website will be the big container of the website. and you're not going to use any other tool. But in some cases, you may want to do like that, just to embed us in another web layout you are creating using another tool. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that clear, both two options, Toger?
Yeah, no, and offers
Okay.
a lot of versatility that way.
Yeah, and I think that was important to explain that. And let's go to the questions. And let me start to reply about performance. Okay.
Okay, sure.
We have that cross-platform development tool. So if you try to open this HTML5 page, you see there is not much there. It's pointing to web services. There's lots of behind the scenes happening here when you run that. So when you save and deploy the page to HTML5, we are not creating lots of HTML5 controls and codes that you need to upload. We are doing lots of embedded web services and lots of optimization to run those displays. That's why you can achieve a level of functionality here with that type of animation, having those pop-ups, having those button reactions with zero JavaScript programming and a performance. If you try to have those hundreds of hard-coded JavaScript components doing low-level programming, your performance will be worse than us for sure. Or if you use another tool that's pure HTML5 JavaScript, but don't have that cross-platform optimization, I can bet that our performance will be better. How much money we can discuss offline. But I really can bet, and in fact, we are going to the answers. They asked us to benchmark against some specific other products. And I'll not name the products right away, but I can tell you our performance is chiefly better, and what you can do on the symbols is more flexible. You don't need to pick up predefined components. There is more flexibility and speeds what you can do in our HTML5 comparing with the solutions that are generally available in the market as well. Let's go to the questions.
Sure. And thank you for that explanation today. That was very insightful.
Okay.
All right, so these came from our forum. So if you're tuned in, by the way, you can always hop on with us at forum.tatsoft.com and just leave your questions, and we'll definitely cover them there as well as here. But the first one, Mark, was, let me just see here. Is it possible to open an external HTML5 page or add an iframe on HTML5 display? I mean to open an external page inside the display, like opening a web page inside the display on a frame.
Definitely, yes. Okay. What I'm showing work both ways. The same way we can be inside an iframe, the components that we add to our pages can be an HTML5 content just pointing to another website. Okay.
Okay.
And one thing that we have, it's really nice, even if you are creating a .NET page, to use the thin client technology, okay? Even when you are doing the thin client technology, you also can embed a web frame there. Let me go to one page here that will be a .NET page. So here I'm in this page that was created to be, no, I'm sorry, this was also web. I know for the code behind, if the code behind C# or VB.NET, it's .NET, it's JavaScript, anyway. So in this page that's created to be a .NET thin client, okay, we do have one component that is a web browser. So you can embed here any URL, and that URL can be defined dynamically. So you can embed other iframes inside our HTML5 page, or you can embed other components even inside .NET pages, okay, as a frame. And one thing probably I should make a quick comment. There is not a question on that. Perhaps we even need to add that on the previous video, because some people, I realized by some support questions we had, they did not really understood very much our concept of what is the .NET Thin Client. So I replied this question that was not asked by anyone, reply anyway. That's a rich client. A rich client, you need to install the client on the remote computer. Almost no one uses that anymore.
Okay.
The only reason you have that because that support hot standby, even both servers are out. The application you should keep running, and you can switch servers dynamically. There is a few specific scenarios on some very advanced configurations that you can benefit of you call a fat client. There are still a few, not very common at all. Okay.
Okay.
But the .NET Thin client, you don't install anything on the Thin clients. You put a URL the same way the HTML5 clients. Okay. Pretty much the same. The only two difference, number one, you need to be in a Windows computer. You cannot do that from my Mac, okay? And the second one, when the application starts to run, it will run in full screen. But the features that we're going to have are the exactly same one of the fat clients, of the full client, but with zero installation. So one thing I want to make very clear, because people don't talk about that. So here you see I'm running the application, not the browser. I'm running the application in a full screen. And I'm running the exactly same application I would run in my local computer in the .NET Windows Presentation Foundation. I'm running in my Thin clients, okay? And this client, if you have a Windows computer, the performance and the security, it will be typically much easier to achieve higher performance and higher security than in HTML5 clients. That's why we keep that option in the products, okay?
Okay.
And in fact, I will even, for the guys that are looking on I will stop sharing my screen a little bit so I can have eye try for the questions. Some products, they are basic custom displays and very basic web support, okay? I must disclose that from time to time, I have requests because I was the designer and founder of the company Tatsoft. And believe it or not, from time to time, I had emails or people requesting features. People that knew my personal email, they still think that I have some sort of consulting agreement after I sold the company. And I say, no.
That's wild.
I have no connection at more. And most of the feature they request, I can say, sorry, I can't. Not only because I'm not in the consulting, but part of the reason I sold the company and create a new software from scratch is there some technological decisions on technologies, some architecture decisions that what we do now, it was just not possible to do at all, given the technology selections on the core components and how you lay out some architecture. So it's a completely different new design to achieve that. Because one of the questions the forums specifically asked if we to compare with the web tools they have that are more limited. So that product, he had great when running custom displays. But the web was lacking a little behind, as far I know, at least that user told me. There are some tools, they are only web design. they have great web tools, but they don't have native displays.
Mm-hmm.
So the market in general don't want to point you why you need both, because they have only one. Either are good on native and barely support web, or they are great on web but don't have native. So I need to eventually put that clip Togar as a video by itself, explaining why that's important. If you need the top of performance you can have, and you have a Windows computer or .NET computer, there is no need to have a HTML5 JavaScript that's multi-platform. Because by the very nature to be able to run in any browser, any computer, there are some things on HTML5 that now, today, at these dates, we cannot yet do, that would be possible to do if you know we are running a .NET Theme clients. And both clients, the deployment is just a URL. So the decision which technology I'm going to use the project is very simple. Will be my clients open those pages from a computer running .NET, any version of Windows, any version of .NET, or you'll be running from other operating systems, or they need necessary to see that inside the browser tab. That's a decision. And you're going to find out that in many projects, you want to have both. You want to have the operator workstations being able to have zero deployment, but being .NET clients. And you are going to have to serve browser tab web pages on dashboards or whatever. So keep that in mind. Next question.
Before I'm going to hop into another question, but I want to just ask you something, when you're talking about working in the days of Indusoft and kind of the limitations of technology to what we have now. Back then, that version of you, did you see this kind of coming already and what we have now? I mean, were you already anticipating?
Well, I started to see that, frankly, around 2008, 2007, 2008.
Okay.
At that time, frankly, we didn't even have much about IoT. The buzzword was first Industry 4.0. Before IoT, it was more Industry 4.0, the buzzword, but with similar concepts and things. And I did try as much as possible to put some little concepts here and there. At that time, for instance, it was a big push for us to release a version of the UI with Silverlights. And I was trying to explain that, okay, that's great, but that's only a buzzword. Does not help at all put a UI in Silverlight, not even HTML5 for that matter. If you don't modify your tag structure, your inter-task communication, your driver model, your asset modeling, your scripting languages, to be able to support that Induce IoT or Induce 4.0, all those distributed technologies, you need to have those changes in the core. Yeah. And bad news, my friends and investors at that time and partners, we need to throw away all our source codes and create a new product that we can eventually migrate a small piece and there, but not even be compatible with the previous system. Yeah. Because you need really to do a shift in many architectural concepts to do that. And of course, it's a very hard decision for a company to do. To the point that, frankly, it was easier to sell and start that for another company rather than switch direction. That's why they say, oh, but how is it that Tatsoft, a small to medium-sized company, can have that tool and not that big one of the 5 big players? For the same reason on my previous company, 1,000 times worse, because they are 1,000 times bigger than I was. So for them to make the decision to put a product line as a legacy product and start 2 to 5 years of a multi-million-dollar investment to create a new technological platform from scratch, it's very hard to put that decision, the bigger the company. And frankly, it's very hard to do if you don't have previous experiences creating that kind of platform. If you hire, even if you put the $5, $10 million, 15, you need to do that. That's more or less the ballpark you need to even decide to go that path. If you have that, but you don't have the change the product experience, you may waste that money after 2 or 3 years and have a failure. As the people that work deep in our markets, they can name 2 or 3 products created by big corporations that never really survive more than 1 or 2 years in the markets. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Thank you for that.
That's your question, Toga?
Yeah, no, that answers it. Thank you. Really
Okay.
appreciate that. All right. So next one that we had on the forum was combo box. It shows in the designer and preview in a very different style than on the browser. Version is 9.18. This was actually one of our first HTML5 questions because you can tell by the version there.
Exactly.
And .NET is 4.6.2.
Yeah.
The version on designer is much better, and I'd like to see that. So that's
positive. Anyway, that's only one of the things you need to aware of that cross development. So I will reply that question showing again my screen to explain that, it's great to have exactly the same drawing tools and technology in all platforms. So what are the limitations on that? So let's full disclosure talk what are the limitations. The first one, we made lots of effort. So the basic functionalities, like puts an option on the screen and applying some dynamic behavior and our own symbol library to available to all platforms. But when you go to some Windows controls like list box, combo box, or to more advanced controls like a bar chart or a gauge, those controls not necessarily will be available or have the same look and feel in all platforms. And there is really no way around that. One thing we try to do to minimize that issue, it's very simple. First of all, if I'm creating a page that's HTML5, and when you go here to insert those more advanced components, we only will show the ones that are compatible with HTML5. So if I'm doing an HTML5 page, this area, and they be slightly different because we are going to show what's compatible with that technology. And we also do that some controls that are more common, like data grids, bar charts, we have versions for both technologies that are pretty much looking the same, okay? That we try to minimize that limitation. What may happen from time to time, and that's the question, you may have some controls, especially Windows controls, that the platform has, even the browser itself, they has a predefined way to render that. So it's expected, unfortunately, that some Windows controls, they may look slightly different depending on the browser or deploying. But one thing that we can work with you that put a specific question about combo box and Chrome is to eventually to create our symbol library objects that will behave like a combo box, but it's a native object using our own symbol library. And if you do that, we'll have more control on how the browser will render that object. Will be not completely dependent on the browser decision. Because as it's now, if it's a Windows control, we just tell the browser, give me a combo box. How the browser will draw is at the browser. So if that's creating some struggle in your application to some specific browser or some objects, we can follow up with our support to try to have a symbol that will handle pretty much the same across all platforms.
Okay. No, perfect. Thank you for that, Mark. And that question came from Mario. So Mario, we'll make sure we'll follow up with you there. Next one was, is it possible to extend the list of web components? And I know you talked on this a little bit earlier.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You can use any HTML5 control. By the way, I know about the lyric library. It's a very interesting library. you can use right away using our generic HTML5. One thing that you have my recommendation, if you want to use many controls from Telerik, probably should have a deeper discussion for us to have access to some libraries that only our OEM partners, they have access, or some integration channels that's not typically expose the products. So you can do those wrappers. So you don't need to do too much JavaScript behind the scenes. You can pick up that Telerik control and create that nice, beautiful configuration dialog that maps directly to the data source, just to allow you to use those external components a little more quickly, but you can use right away.
That's great. Yeah, we'll definitely follow up with them too, just to help them out with the wrapper portion there. And last question here is, my projects and client asked for pure HTML5 with responsive design. Also, if in a button I write C# code in runtime with HTML5, how is this code handled? May it run at server side and send results to client?
Okay, to answer a question, if you want a responsive design, you need to create your pages, as I did show before, using the feature that we call dashboard or responsive UI that we have in our product. We can have both the proportional resizing, or we can the responsive resizing when you create our HTML5 pages. And regarding the code specifically, as I did show the example, if the page is for HTML5, by default, the code will be JavaScript only.
Okay.
You can set up a tag or call a service on the web on the server side that you run C# code, and either through a tag in the application or for the reply for the service, you can feedback a value to the clients. But the code itself, the first line of code you put in reaction to the button for HTML5 pages needs to be JavaScript. If after that you're going to invoke Python or call tags on the server side or invoke Tatsoft services on the server side, you can do all those things in that code in reaction to that button.
Okay. All right. So I hope that answers your question, Nutter. And, we'll follow up with you too if you do have anything else. And for those of you tuned in, you can always visit us at forum.tatsoft.com and leave your questions there, and our support team will help you out. Mark, is there anything else you want to cover on the HTML5
No,
topic?
we are beyond our time. Probably
Yeah.
you should pick up this presentation, split in 3 or 4 videos.
Well, we've got a few people tuned in, so we appreciate their tuning in and following us. Yeah, we're definitely a little bit over time, but I guess we'll just wrap it up here. I just wanted to say one last thing is that if you are working on a project or you've got a screen that you want to share with us, we're going to be doing a little thing called "What Are You Working On?" to kind of build community, and you can, we'll highlight what you're working on, share it with others, so that we can do a little bit of knowledge share. And so on that note, I think I'm going to end it here. And Mark, thank you again. And we're going to release next week's topic. We'll push out on Tuesday. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Take care, Mark.
Bye.
Bye.